Atom Symbol Series, Chinese Nuclear Secrets, Episode 4. 2 bombs, 1 satellite. The top secret plan that changed history. The Order in the Underground Room. Beijing. A cold winter morning, 1965. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in a cramped underground room, dimly lit by a single yellow bulb dangling from the ceiling. In the suffocating silence, Mao Zedong sits at a large wooden table. Before him lies a thin sheet of paper, with just a few words written across it. 2 bombs, 1 satellite. No one in the room dares to speak. Next to Mao are Zhou Enlai, Chen Yi, and a group of top scientific advisors, the same people who had witnessed China's first successful nuclear test just 1 year earlier. But this time, Mao's ambition goes far beyond a single bomb. He picks up a brush and slowly writes a short line in the margin of the document. We cannot depend on anyone. If we want peace, we must possess comprehensive deterrence. Then, he looks up and speaks in a hoarse but firm voice. 1 atomic bomb is not enough. We need a hydrogen bomb, thousands of times more powerful. And we need an eye in the sky, a satellite, to see the world from space. The room remains silent. In the advisor's eyes, astonishment and fear flicker. This is a nearly impossible mission. The country is economically devastated. The aftermath of the Great Leap Forward still haunts the countryside. And millions are hungry. Yet Mao's voice is ironclad. Even if we must sell the clothes off our backs, China will do it. From that moment, the 2 bombs, 1 satellite project is born, so secret that only a few dozen people across China know its true nature. No public documents. No official announcements. Only handwritten memoranda passed quietly from hand to hand at night, under dim lights. Above ground, Beijing buzzes with political meetings and ideological struggles. But deep underground, a small group of scientists, military officers, and engineers begin sketching a dream, to reach space with their bare hands. They know that a single error, even a wrong number, could collapse the entire plan. But if successful, China would join the ranks of the world's scientific superpowers. Meanwhile in Moscow, Soviet experts watch closely. They sneer at the news that China plans to develop a hydrogen bomb without outside help. One Soviet physicist mocks. Even with equipment and documents, it took us nearly a decade to build the H-bomb. The Chinese will take a century. But what they don't know is that, in that underground room in Beijing, a nation is channeling its very will to survive into this challenge. For Mao, 2 bombs, 1 satellite, is not merely about weapons, it is about national dignity. A declaration that China will never again be controlled by others. That quiet night, after the meeting ends, Zhou Enlai walks out of the bunker into the freezing air. He turns to look at the steel door behind him, where young engineers are beginning work on the first Chinese satellite design. His eyes show a flicker of worry, and he sighs softly. A perilous path, but one we must take. On the wall, a red slogan stands out against gray concrete. Dare to think, dare to act, for China to rise. February 1965. While the nation struggles with the aftermath of famine, a small group of elite scientists is summoned to an unmarked building in western Beijing. No one knows why. No one dares ask. The summons bears a single red line. Special mission, no disclosure, no discussion, no leaving without orders. Among them are legendary figures. Qian Shuisun, the brilliant rocket scientist who once worked at Caltech but was deported from the U.S. Deng Jiaxin, head of the atomic bomb program. Yu Min, the quiet nuclear physicist who would later be called the father of China's hydrogen bomb. And hundreds of unnamed engineers whose lives remain footnotes in history. Inside the sealed meeting room, Zhou Enlai says only, "This is a direct order from the chairman. You are chosen not for fame, but because you will keep this secret to your graves." He then unrolls a large map on the table. 3 red stamps mark the key sites: Lop Nur, Qinghai, Jiaquan. 3 deserts, 3 pillars of the 2 bombs, 1 satellite plan. Lop Nur, site of the first atomic test, becomes the Hydrogen Bomb Research Center. Qinghai, home of the newly established Institute 221, focusing on physics, chemistry, and metallurgy for nuclear materials. Jiaquan, in the Gobi Desert, where China's first space launch site is under construction. The project is given the code name Target 7201. Budget: undisclosed. Personnel: unlisted. All technical documents are fragmented. Delivered by hand, no telegraph. No mail. Scientists must sign a silence pact. No discussion with family. No public records. No trace of the research left behind. They become ghosts among civilians. By day, professors, engineers, workers. By night, they vanish into deserts and underground labs. Only a tiny core within the Defense Science Commission sees the whole picture. The first obstacle is resources. Post-famine China has no money for advanced science. Measuring instruments are recycled from industrial junk. Vacuum tubes are stripped from old radios. Nuclear thermometers are built from outdated components. At Institute 221, Yu Min recalls, "We had no cooling equipment, so we used ice from the cafeteria. Many experiments overheated within minutes. But no one stopped." Qian Shuisun, once at the center of American rocketry, now works in a cramped underground room, redrawing entire missile launch systems from memory with chalk. No blueprints, no simulation software, only intellect and willpower. Secrecy brings crushing pressure. Scientists cannot send letters or go home. Many work for months in sub-zero temperatures, eating hard bread and sleeping in sand-covered containers. One young engineer writes in his notebook, knowing he'll burn it after his shift. "Every night, I look up at the Gobi sky, wondering if anyone knows we're here. But then I think, one day, when China launches a satellite, the whole world will know." The first grains of China's space dream. Summer 1966. Temperatures in the Gobi Desert soar above 45 degrees Celsius. At Jiaquan, thousands of engineers, workers, and soldiers camp in the sand, building launch towers, workshops, and concrete structures by hand, with no modern machines. Above, red flags whip in the hot wind, streaks of blood against a vast sky. Inside the testing workshop, Qian Shuisun inspects the fuel system for the first Long March rocket. The pipes below him are crude and leaky, patched by hand welding. Engineers call it the factory in hell because of the heat, toxic fumes, and the constant fear that one spark could obliterate everything. Yet no one quits. Qian says calmly but firmly, "We've been cut off from the world. The more isolated we are, the more the world must lift its head to see us." Meanwhile in Qinghai, Yu Min and Deng Jiaxuan face an almost unsolvable challenge: building a thermonuclear weapon without any Soviet instructions. They have only a blurred photo from a Soviet science journal, a few incomplete formulas, and dozens of failed models. Yu Min recalls, "We tried hundreds of designs. Most didn't work. Sometimes the lab was silent, only the sound of pencils scratching paper and the ticking clock." One young engineer dies from radiation exposure during a reactor cooling test. His co-worker writes a single line in the report: "We lost a man, but the lesson will save a generation." This is the real price of progress: sweat, blood, and forgotten names buried in classified files. At the same time, Beijing is swept up in a new political storm, the Cultural Revolution. Heroes of science become suspicious intellectuals. Institutes are investigated, scientists are denounced. Many from the two bombs, one satellite team are accused of Western thinking, placed under house arrest, or sent to labor camps. But something extraordinary happens. Mao orders the direct protection of the project. All documents, equipment, and personnel are moved under the military, shielded by the Central Military Commission. This is one of the few moments during the Cultural Revolution when science is allowed to survive the political storm. Mao understands. Losing this project would mean returning to zero, erasing 15 years of effort. That night, Yu Min sits alone in the lab, looking out a sand-covered window. He lights a cigarette, the flame flickers in the wind, reflecting on his goggles. On the table lies the first hand-drawn sketch of China's hydrogen bomb, crude. shaky lines carrying the fate of a nation. Far away, Qian Shuisun is sketching the orbital model for China's first satellite. In his imagination, a small block of metal will circle the Earth, carrying the 5-star red flag, a symbol of the rebirth of a nation once dismissed as a scientific beggar. The desert night is silent. No one knows that beneath the sands, a dream is taking shape, quiet, steadfast, a dream that will forever change China's place in the world. The cold moonlight spills over the rough industrial buildings, like a glow from another era, illuminating those who have yet to realize that they are rewriting history with their bare hands. The Project of the Sun. Lop Nur Desert, early 1967. The wind howls across a land of death. On a white, salty, dusty plain, hundreds of young engineers are building a secret research complex, codenamed Project 9.20. No signs, no main gate. From afar, it looks like an abandoned meteorological station. But beneath the sand lies the heart of a hydrogen dream, China's first thermonuclear bomb. Inside a cold underground bunker, Yu Min stands before a blackboard covered with dense mathematical symbols and physics equations. He is working on the two-stage thermonuclear fusion problem, something the US and the Soviet Union mastered only after decades of effort. Next to him stands Deng Jiaoshen, the leader of the first atomic bomb project. They exchange a silent look, both fully aware. If we fail, China goes back to square one. Nights are long and dark, lit only by oil lamps. No one dares switch on large lights. American spy satellites might be watching. They write with pencils, calculating each figure hundreds of times by hand. Sometimes, Yu Min collapses on the desk, dreaming of deuterium and tritium nuclei spinning in a miniature solar explosion. When he wakes, he writes again, like a madman chasing the shape of a dream. At the top level, the National Defense Science Commission reports directly to Premier Zhou Enlai. No real test data, no sample designs, they are walking in the dark. Zhou simply replies, "Let them walk, it's in the darkness that people find real light." The first test ends in complete failure. A simulated thermonuclear model explodes in the lab, blowing off a 300-kilogram steel door. 3 engineers are injured, one loses his sight permanently. When the rescue team arrives, Yu Min stands silently, hands trembling, eyes vacant. He whispers, "An error of 0.2% in compression energy. That's all it takes to destroy everything." Instead of giving up, the team goes back to work that very night. They correct every number, every equation, every energy model. No computers, everything is calculated manually. Tens of thousands of calculations fill hundreds of sheets. One engineer later recalled, "We pasted paper on walls, on the ceiling, even the floor. When you walked into the room, everything was equations. There was no day or night anymore." Meanwhile, far across Lop Nur, the logistics team faces a seemingly simple but dangerous mission. Transporting lithium-6 deuteride, the key fusion material, thousands of kilometers through the desert without detection. Convoys are disguised as army livestock units. Containers covered in dry straw. They travel at night, lights off, guided only by compasses. One truck overturns in the desert, 2 people die of thirst. But the material and documents remain intact. The report contains only one line. Mission accomplished, no losses. No one speaks of their deaths again. At Lop Nur, loss is expected on the road to the sun. By May 1967, Yu Min finally completes a workable theoretical design for the hydrogen bomb. Codenamed Number 6. On the final sheet, he writes with a trembling hand, "If this reaction goes off as predicted, it will shine like the real sun." When Mao Zedong receives the design, he reads a few lines and nods. "Good, let China's sun rise from the desert." June 1967. The Lop Nur Desert is eerily silent. No birds, no sound. Wind sweeps golden sand over barbed wire fences and military barracks. At the center stands a 100-meter steel tower, topped with a 2-ton silver sphere, China's first hydrogen bomb. No one is allowed to call it by its real name. Officially, It is Object 596E, connected to the previous atomic test circuit. But among thousands at Lop Nur, it has another whispered name on freezing nights. Taiyang, the sun. June 16, 1967. Inside the command bunker, the countdown clock starts. Commander Chen Nengkuan checks the final figures. Primary nuclear temperature, 1.5 million degrees Celsius. Compression stage pressure, 50 million atmospheres. Secondary fusion temperature, expected 100 million degrees Celsius. No one speaks. Only the Geiger counter ticks steadily like a heartbeat. In Beijing, Zhou Enlai receives the report. All systems ready, awaiting detonation order. He looks at Mao Zedong, sitting silently with an unlit cigarette. The room is heavy with tension. Mao says slowly, "We are not just detonating a bomb. We are detonating the shadow of humiliation." Zhou nods. A telegram is sent. Begin countdown. T-10 minutes. At Lop Nur, everyone retreats to shelters. The wind picks up, sand whipping through the air. Yu Min stands by a half-meter thick steel door, staring at the tower. His hands are clenched so tightly they bleed. Deng Jiashen gives a hoarse laugh. "If it works, it'll shine brighter than 100 suns." Yu Min whispers, "If it doesn't, the sun will bury us all." T-60 seconds. The siren wails. Everyone ducks, shielding their faces. The announcer's dry voice echoes through loudspeakers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The second the hand hits zero, a beam of light pierces the desert sky. Within 0.3 seconds, temperatures reach over 300 million degrees Celsius, 20 times hotter than the real sun's core. The sand melts into glass. Shockwaves race outward more than 50 kilometers, flattening everything. The bunker doors shudder. People fall to the floor. On the monitors, a massive white fireball rises like a cosmic volcano. Yu Min rises, speechless. Deng Jiashen weeps, not from fear, but because China has touched the energy of the stars. 3 hours later, radiation teams return. The ground is still smoldering, melted glass reflects sunlight like mirrors. Instruments show. Yield, 3.3 megatons. Fusion efficiency, 100%. No radiation leakage beyond the test zone. A scientist exclaims, "We did it, no help, entirely on our own." In Beijing, Mao stands up, looks out the window, and says, "Good, China's sun has risen." 3 days later, military convoys leave Lop Nur. No one speaks. They stare out the windows at the smoking desert. A young soldier whispers, "Do you still see it? 3 days, and I still see it shining." His comrade nods silently. No one knows if it's illusion or the bomb's afterglow. In temporary Urumqi labs, radiation levels are 20 times normal. Teams risk their lives to retrieve instruments and samples. Some never return. Their names never appear in any report, only one classified line remains. Died in the course of a special national mission. June 17, 1967. Radio Beijing announces, "The People's Republic of China has successfully conducted its first hydrogen bomb test." The results are exactly as expected. The news spreads worldwide. In Washington, the CIA convenes emergency meetings. In Moscow, the Soviet defense minister reads the report in silence. The Times writes, "A nation once torn by civil war, famine, and revolution has now harnessed the power of the universe. With awe comes fear. Nuclear powers rethink their entire strategies. A dragon has awakened, one that plays by no Western rules." In Beijing, Zhou Enlai reads aloud the names of those who died from radiation. Mao remains silent for a long time, then says, "History will not remember all their names, but this sun belongs to them." Outside, gentle rain falls on Jiangnan, glistening in the yellow lights. A young scientist, voice trembling with emotion, reports, "We can go further now. We can fly to the sky." Mao looks up, eyes sharp as steel. "Good, now, a satellite." In another room, a 300-page document is approved. Program 651, 2 bombs, 1 satellite. From that moment, China's dream expands beyond nuclear weapons, toward space. Those who survive at Lop Nur return to their work in silence. No titles, no rewards. They simply look up each night at the sky, knowing they once created that light. One scientist later writes in an unpublished diary, "We created the sun, but within that light, there was also our own darkness." Look up to the sky. Winter, 1968. A small underground room in Beijing, no windows. Only a dim yellow light shining on tired faces. On the wall hangs a world map, with launch sites marked in the US, the Soviet Union, and France. China has only one red dot, at Jiuquan, Gansu. A desolate place, where sandstorms rage year-round, and winter temperatures can drop below -30 degrees Celsius. But there, a dream was taking root. On the table lies a thin sheet of paper, written in firm, steel-like strokes. National goal: launch China's first artificial satellite into orbit before 1970. Signed, Mao Zedong. The room falls silent. They look at each other, fully aware. The nation doesn't even have enough rice to eat. Yet it is determined to reach space. An elderly scientist lets out a soft sigh. We have nothing except willpower. No rocket launch experience. No guidance systems. No imported parts. No foreign currency. Only leftover equipment from the short-lived Soviet cooperation, and a few worn-out technical manuals. The research center in Jiuquan began with abandoned warehouses and rusted wind tunnels. Young engineers dug through snow, assembled rocket frames by hand, and melted alloys in coal furnaces. Materials were scarce, wires were insufficient, even soldering silver had to be taken from female workers' old jewelry. Yet, they pressed on. At night, when desert winds howled through wooden cracks, the only sounds were hammering, lathes spinning, and chalk scribbles on the blackboard. No one believes we can do it, but we must. Yu Min, the man behind China's hydrogen bomb design, quietly shifted to rocket propulsion research for the Long March program. He told the young engineers, "We've made energy explode, now let's make it fly." Qian Shuisun, once imprisoned for 5 years in the US before being sent back to China, became the chief architect of the space program. Inside him burned a quiet resolve. "When I left America, they said China would never have rockets. I want to prove them wrong." Late at night, he drafted the 2 bombs, 1 satellite plan on used drawing paper, his hands trembling in the cold. Each line of formula carried the wounds of war. But he persisted, knowing, if we don't do it, our descendants will forever look up at someone else's sky. 1969, Cultural Revolution at its peak. Scientists were accused of academic reactionary crimes. Institutes were sealed, labs were smashed. Amid the chaos, the satellite team worked secretly at night, hiding from Red Guards, burying technical documents underground to keep them from being burned. A young engineer wrote in his diary, "We fear a knock at the door more than we fear bombs. But if our satellite can fly, everything will be worth it." In Beijing, Premier Zhou Enlai quietly shielded the research team. He told his bodyguard, "Do not let anyone touch Qian Shuisun. One day, his rockets will carry our national flag into the sky." By late 1969, amidst turmoil and distrust, a small test satellite, weighing less than 200 kilograms, was completed. No warhead, no complex instruments. Only a radio transmitter and a small loudspeaker to play "The East is Red," a song praising Mao Zedong. An old engineer looked at the tiny satellite and murmured, "It looks like a singing teapot. But if it flies, the world will hear China's voice." Lop Nur, autumn 1966. Once a dried sea, now a harsh desert with no seasons. No colors, only sand, iron, and human will. In this desolation rose a city of shadows, base 221, where Chinese scientists lived and worked on the nuclear program. Days scorched above 50 degrees Celsius. Nights froze below -20 degrees Celsius. Water was rationed by the bucket. Rice was mixed with sand during transport, still eaten. A young engineer recorded, "We cooked rice with sand, wrote formulas on salt, and breathed with willpower." They weren't just making a bomb, they were building a national soul. Once Mao approved the two bombs, one satellite plan, the entire nation mobilized. Textile workers in Shanghai wove heat-resistant fabric for the H-bomb. Steelworkers in Wuhan forged reactor parts. Physics students in Beijing were sent to the desert without knowing why. In makeshift labs, they used soda bottles as test tubes, hands as rulers, and paper charts for calculations, no computers in sight. Can we build a hydrogen bomb without Soviet test data? We don't have their data. A young engineer smiled sadly. But we have our belief. June 1967 to 60 meters underground. A countdown began. China's first H-bomb, the Sphere of Light, was mounted in a bomber H-6. General Ni Rongjun stood silently. "This is not only a test of physics," he once said. "It's a test of civilization." Outside, radar screens traced the bomber's flight path. No one spoke. Hundreds of heartbeats merged into one silent symphony. Then, light. A brilliant white sphere exploded over Lop Nur, expanding like a storm of sunlight. Sand rose in spirals. Space tore open with the roar of nature and mankind. 3 minutes later, radiation data confirmed. China's H-bomb test succeeded, only 32 months after its first atomic bomb. A world record. In the bunker, no one cheered. An old scientist, hair covered in sand, simply nodded. Now, the Chinese people no longer live under anyone's shadow. In Beijing, Mao Zedong heard the news, smiled, and said 4 words. Worthy of China. From plans to symbol. 2 bombs, 1 satellite, became more than a technical program. It was a symbol of national revival. In a time when the world saw China as impoverished and backward, they created weapons to rival nuclear superpowers. Lop Nur, once only sand and wind, became sacred ground, where ordinary people achieved the extraordinary. Late 1969, before dawn. Beijing's winter wind cracked skin, and traces of the Cultural Revolution lingered on the streets. But in research rooms, lights burned through the night. Scientists scribbled the final formulas on chalk-covered tables. No one was mentioned in the news. No one could speak of their work, not even to their families. A young scientist wrote, "I know that if I fail, no one will know why I disappeared. But if I succeed, the nation will never forget." Meanwhile, in Lop Nur, thousands of workers and engineers labored far from civilization. No stable electricity, no clean water, no mail. Yet they built rooms, drilled holes, erected antennas. After the atomic and hydrogen bombs, came the most distant goal, to launch something into the sky. No American data, no Soviet support. Just blurred blueprints and a few torn Russian notes left behind. If we have no model to follow, we will build our own. Xu Guangzhen, chief engineer. The first Long March rocket test failed, exploded seconds after launch. The second fell right after takeoff. The third caught fire, injuring 12 engineers. Some nights, the entire team sat in the launch field, watching red-hot metal debris fall into the sand, speechless. Not from fear, but because they had nothing left but faith. We conquered the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb. But perhaps, we cannot conquer the sky. Xu Guangxian said nothing. He simply looked up at the dark sky, where the North Star shone alone. One day, he whispered, "This sky will carry our song." They tightened every screw, recalculated every formula, handcrafted every component. When foreign parts were embargoed, they forged their own alloys. When instruments burned out, they relied on instinct. They lived, fought, and created in darkness, so that one day, when the sun rose, China could look up proudly. This was the moment they called before dawn, when nothing remained but human will and unshakable belief. And after hundreds of such nights, in the Gobi Desert, the launch pad for Dongfang Hong 1 was finally ready. A symbol born of earth, sand, And tears, from a generation that vowed never to bow before the world.